Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is part 2. And I'm a part of the Kahua marketing team. Before we get started with today's webinar, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions you want to ask throughout the webinar, you can go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box, which I'm highlighting right now, so you should see that pop up on your screen. We also have a related content section for you guys. Here you'll find additional content for you to enjoy, as well as part 1 if you missed it. And before I introduce today's speakers, we do have a couple of poll questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the first one. How are you currently managing all your funding sources for your K-12 construction projects? We have A, homegrown solutions like Excel or other manual processes. You B, rely on contractors, or C, use a project management information system. So I'm just going to give you guys a couple seconds to go ahead and put your answers in, and then we'll go over the results. I see a couple coming in, so I'm just going to give it a few more seconds for others to put their answers in. Okay, cool. It looks like most people have clicked on a choice, so let's go ahead and see the results. It looks like most of you guys are using a project management information system. So let's go ahead and move on to poll question number 2. How confident are you with your current funding source management? We have A, not confident, B, confident, and then C, very confident. So same thing here. I'm just going to give everyone a couple seconds to go ahead and put in their answers. All right, I'm going to give it a few more seconds. It looks like we have a couple of answers coming in. All righty, let's go ahead and move on to the results. So it looks like everyone's kind of a lot of different answer choices. So let's go ahead and move on to the next poll question. How long does it take you to prepare for your monthly, quarterly, or annual audits on your capital program? We have A, weeks, B, days, C, hours, or D, minutes. So same thing here. I'll just give you guys some time to put in your answers, and then we'll go over the results. All right, I'm just going to give a couple more seconds to see if we get any other answers in. All righty, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the results. So it looks like everyone has different answers between weeks, days, or hours. And then our final poll question for you guys is there a specific topic you would like more information on? We have A, reporting and dashboards, B, cost management, C, capital planning, D, document management, or E, ERP integration. So go ahead, put in your answers. Alrighty, it looks like most people have submitted an answer, so let's go ahead and look at the results. So it looks like it's a split between reporting and dashboards and capital planning. And that was the last poll question we had for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce today's speakers. We have Brendan Spence. He's a client executive with Kahua, and he'll be hosting today's webinar. And then we have Dan. He's a solutions consultant, and he'll be joining us for the demo portion. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Brendan.
Thanks, Dominga. Yeah, appreciate everyone joining us today. Looking forward to spending the next 30 or so minutes with you all. Wanted to give you a quick overview of Kahua before passing it off to Dan. And talk about how Kahua has gotten here today. So for those that don't know, the same founders of Kahua also founded a construction project management software named Constructware back in the mid 90s. It's a very successful company, one of the first internet-based project management softwares, and was acquired by Autodesk. But after that acquisition, they took a step back, saw where the industry was going as well as where technology was going, and decided to build Kahua with the one goal of helping the industry innovate and solve its own problems. And the way we've done that with school districts is by having these industry K-12 roundtables. They meet 2 to 3 times a year. They actually had one last week. But we get the minds of all these school districts across the country, as you see here today, from California, New York, Florida, to discuss best practices where Kahua is helping, as well as other common challenges that they're facing and where Kahua can help address those. So some of those challenges that get brought up are setting up projects for a successful state audit, utilizing your funds with cash restrictions, communicating with your board and other stakeholders. And through those conversations, we've tailored Kahua to address these specific needs. So our Kahua for K-12 offering is still a full owner's project lifecycle, having functionality that addresses the full phase of that owner's project lifecycle, from planning through construction into operations. But as you can see on the right, some of those applications are tailored towards those managing the funding sources, the analytics to dive into or to help report back to your board, forecasting your cash flows, as well as program summary reporting. So today we'll highlight on some of the funding sources as well as reporting, but if there are any other specific needs that you guys need or are looking for, we're happy to have some follow-up conversations to dive into how Kahua would address your specific business challenges. And with that, I'll pass it over to Dan for the rest of the session.
Thank you, Brendan. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. As Brendan and Dominga said, my name is Dan Reichenbach, and I'm a solutions consultant with Kahua. I've been with Kahua for about a year, but before that, I was a project manager for a construction management firm in and around Philadelphia. So come from not necessarily the owner's world, but definitely working with owners throughout that process, use a couple different softwares in the system. So excited to show you a little bit about Kahua today, specifically our K-12 package, as Brendan mentioned. I live just outside Philadelphia. I see we have some people here from the school district of Philadelphia. I'm not sure if you saw, but Joel Embiid and Paul George are already out this year. So with the NBA season starting this year, it looks like going to be another year of disappointment. But I want to cover in a PowerPoint before we jump into Kahua. And that is how projects and programs are set up in Kahua, which is through this hierarchical structure. Here's an example of how a school district might set up their hierarchy. Maybe you have different regions you break it into, your different sets of schools, and then your projects beneath there. We're actually going to take a look at a report of one of our existing customers that shows a little bit about how they break it down. But there's 2 reasons why this is important. The first is from a configuration standpoint. Kahua is very configurable, meaning that we can easily tweak settings to get the software to conform to how you want to perform or how you want to do business, rather than making you conform to it. And that might be changing the fields in change orders, or easily modifying workflows, or how funding sources are distributed to different projects. But while you can standardize how you do things by setting those settings up at the top and letting them filter down, it also gives you the ability to manage projects differently. You can easily break that chain at any point. And then if you have different size projects or different types of projects that need to be managed differently throughout your portfolio, it gives you the flexibility to do that and save on administration time. When I was a project manager and I used a different system, step 1 was make the project and then spend an hour tweaking the settings to get it to be how the owner we worked with wanted it to operate. And with this hierarchy, you can save the time on that throughout your portfolio. The second reason this is important is from a reporting standpoint, reporting and dashboards. So we're going to take a look at a couple different dashboards and reports today. You showed in the questions that you answered at the beginning that there seems to be some interest in that. And it's nice to be able to do that at the top and get an entire portfolio level. But with this hierarchy, it gives you the ability to filter that down to any level of this hierarchy. So different schools, different regions, however you want to break it down, you can easily roll up reports and data to any level of that with just a click of a button. So this is Kahua. What you see here is our home screen. So I have my favorited projects across the top. I have my open tasks in the bottom left, which is a very important component of Kahua, and we're going to talk about a little bit more. My unread messages on the right. I can access our help center, which we call Kahua University, that has more videos and documentation to help teach you about different components of Kahua. I have my app launchpad on the left. It's very similar to Windows across the bottom. I can pin applications I'm planning on using or use often. Anything I'm using is going to be populated here. And you can see I have a couple different apps that we're going to take a look at today. If I go into a application, I can see the project that I'm in. I can click on that and quickly bounce around between projects I've most recently visited. Same with the application that I'm using. Kahua is meant to be not only collaborative, but also multitask focused. So you have the ability to bounce around easily. If I'm working on something and I have to leave, go to another project, another application, it's going to save where I'm at. And I can jump back to where I was and it'll bring me back right to where I was working on. We're going to start with our analytics app, which is Kahua, Power BI embedded in Kahua. And this is one of those areas of dashboards and reporting that we're going to take a look at. We're going to filter this in throughout the entire presentation, but I want to start here with some basic general portfolio dashboards. And the reason I want to start here is because everywhere else where we're managing projects day to day, whether that's creating and approving change orders or processing invoices or managing sources of funds, this is where all the data can be summarized into these dashboards. And because it's Power BI, I have the ability to easily interact with and filter these dashboards. So for example, if I want to look at just projects that are red, I can click on the graph. It's going to filter my list down for me. Now we have a bunch of out-of-the-box dashboards that we can just plug and play with in your environment during an integration, but we also work with customers all the time to tweak these, whether that might be changing the columns of the information that you want to see, the filters across the top, or these different graphs, or create entirely new ones. We have a data science team that can sit with you and figure out what it is that you need on your dashboards, and we can create those for you. Another example is this project financial portfolio. So this is taking all of the projects in my portfolio and giving me budget, cost, and payment information with the ability to filter down to a select group of projects that I might be interested in, or going back to that hierarchy, going to any level of that hierarchy and seeing that group of projects and getting a summary of budget and cost information. A lot of our customers that need to just focus on a specific school, they can just go to that level of the hierarchy, run this report. It'll show them what their budget, commitments, and payments are for just that school, as an example. And if you want to see just a project view, this is an example of one where I can see some basic project information, some scheduled milestones, some cost information on the left, and then our risk register heat map. So our risk register app would populate here. And this is all hyperlinked because it's Power BI, so the ability to click into this and explore it farther in those specific records. Before we jump into sources of funds and cost management, I just want to familiarize you with some basic features you're going to see in all of our applications. The first is that all these apps are going to have records, so how you're going to view it is up to you. I can click this drop down here and I have a bunch of different views that I can toggle between. And any user can create their own views. It's very easy to go in and you can change the columns, how the records are grouped, sorted, filtered, even these color indicators. You can make those for yourself or share them with the rest of your team. Within these views, I can easily filter down farther if I need to. If I go into a record, here's how one's going to look after it's filled out. But what's important here is that you can have complete control over this. So The fields that need to be entered are entirely configurable. This can be part of that configuration I mentioned, where you can decide what information is important. If this is a change order, you can decide what your team needs to enter for that information, so they don't have to enter superfluous information or there's not information that's missing. I can create my own workflows within here, and we'll talk about that more from a cost management side when we walk through what a change order might look like. I can attach photos. We have a mobile app that all these applications will work on just as you see here, so you can easily take pictures from the field. And of course, attach any documents, whether it's from your desktop or from our file manager app in Kahua. If I click view, I can view the PDF version. And what's nice about this is in Kahua, you can control this yourself. So of course, we have out-of-the-box PDF views. We call them portable views. You might be more familiar with the term mail merger, but we give our customers the ability to modify these themselves. This is just a Word document with tokens. We have training on how to do it. It's a very simple process. And so you can have these presented in the way that you want. Oftentimes our customers are doing this with change orders or pay requests where they need to present that information in a standard way. And you can use it, we can create that for you, or you can modify these yourself. It's going to open my discussions panel on the right. And this is basically a conversation specific to a record. So let's say you have a change order and you need to ask someone a question about it, whether internally or externally. You can have a conversation within that record, tag people in it. They'll get notifications. You can attach documents. So now 6 months from now, when you need to figure out why we approved that change order or what was going on, I can go back and reference this conversation easily. You're going to see all these things standard across all of our applications. So next we're going to talk about budget, cost, sources of funds, that whole side of project and program management. And I want to start with sources of funds. And I have just a little bit of that PowerPoint that helps explain how it works in Kahua before we jump into Kahua. So let's say you have multiple different fund sources. In this case, I have these 3 up at the top. And they might have their own appropriations. You know, maybe each year with my bond, I get a certain amount of appropriations, or with different state funds, they give me different amounts every year, but I want to manage them within the same fund source. You can have that ability to break that up with your appropriations. And then I have a bunch of different projects. Well, Project X is being funded by all 3 of these. Project Z only has 1. I have the ability to fund projects from multiple fund sources and be able to track how those have been funded across those fund sources. I can reserve dollars to them, and then eventually, as the funds are available to me, I can release them to the project, which will allow my project managers to budget and commit those dollars on a project. And then, without having to do a lot of manual work with how these need to be distributed, if there are rules associated with how you spend these funds within projects, you can create those rules within Kahua, whether those are percentages, or maybe I need to spend 2024 before I can dip into 2025. You have the ability to write that business logic into how these fund sources are going to be applied. You can also break it down within a project to what you're spending it on. So let's say you have a donor and you can only spend their money on artwork or something like that. You have the ability to build that logic into your WBS, your work breakdown summary, so that you're controlling how these funds are spent and distributed on jobs without having to manually move those around. And in the end, as we'll show you, all of that is summarized to show you for every project and every fund source how much has been budgeted, committed, and eventually invoiced, so you can see where you're at across the life cycle of budget and cost management throughout a job. So let's go into Kahua and take a look at one of these. I'll go to my sources of funds app. And I'm going to go towards the top of a hierarchy where I've created my fund sources. You can see I have 4 different items here. We're going to go into our 2024 bond. And there's some rules about, when the fund sources start and end that might control functionality. You might have rules about when you can use different years Maybe it's until it's completed, or maybe it's just through a certain period of time, but we have some functionality around that. But what I want to point out and what's important here is the summary box here, where I can see what the original fund amount was from my different appropriations. I can see how much has been reserved and released to projects, how much has been budgeted, committed, and invoiced. And so this is high level from a fund source, what's going on from a budgeting, commitment, invoicing perspective. In a moment, we're going to take a look at what it looks like to actually manage those processes from a day-to-day basis. But what I wanted to show you is that that information, when people are approving change orders and contracts and invoices and creating budgets, it's all being automatically summarized up to this level so that you can easily get this information and eventually report on this information as well. Now, from a fund appropriation standpoint, you'll see I can get this specific information for each of my appropriations as well. So I can report on the different years or however I need to break it up from an appropriation standpoint. And down here, it's showing me the different projects that I've reserved and released these dollars to. Now, if I go into a project where I have released some funds to, I don't have to recreate this in this project. Anytime I release funds or reserve funds to a project, now when I go into that one in sources of funds, it's going to show me the different fund sources that are available on this project, and specifically the fund sources or the releases that have been done to that specific project. So now you'll see that these reserve and release numbers, these are project specific. So I can see that I have this $3,022,000 available for just this job. So let's walk through a life cycle of a cost event or a change event, an item that happens that might affect how our fund sources are being committed. And then we're going to relay that back to how those fund sources are being tracked. And in this instance, we're going to show you how these different applications are connected through Kahua. So we're going to start with an RFI, and I've pre-created one here that has some basic information. But let's say you have one that's done and now it's going to become a change on the job. Well, you have the ability to process that directly into what we call an issue. You might be familiar with the term change event or cost event. We call them issues, but they work in the same way. And so now you can create that connection between the two. It's going to pull over some basic information. Now you can get some insight into how these forms are filled out. You can see I can have my drop downs. That's not important for what we're going to show today, but what we do want to do is just add some detail to one of these line items. So let's say I am the contact. I'm going to choose the activity code associated with it. I can decide how they should be pricing this item. I can put in what I think the number is going to be. Let's do this $1,111 so that later when we go back to the top, you can easily see that change has been made in the fund source. You can see it pulled over some information from the RFI, including a document to show that there's a connection between the two. And then I'm going to click Save and Close. We're not going to go through all of the functionality of issues here, but some things I think are important. The first, this get pricing and confirm pricing. This is a mechanism that can allow you to easily communicate with your contractor. So you can create these issues or change events if you'd like, and then you can have them get notified and receive a task in their court that they need to provide pricing for you. So it's a nice way to be able to track who you need to get information from, whether it's schedule or cost changes, and receive that all electronically, and then be able to create dashboards on that information. Now we're going to say that this pricing is good. We're going to confirm it. And then I'm going to approve this as well. You'll see these send for review and send for approval buttons that could mark these through a workflow. We're going to create a change order in just a second, and we'll show you what those processes can look like and explain a little bit farther how those review and approvals or signatures can work. Now that our issue has been made and we've confirmed our pricing and approved it, we could process that into a change order, but maybe we have a couple different ones that we need to bring together. So I'm going to go to my expenses app, and I'm going to go into a change order that I've just started a little bit. Now, what's important here is this important import issue items. And when I click on this, it's now going to be connected to the issue that we just made and all the other available ones that haven't been assigned change orders before. So maybe at the end of the month, you've been running your change events, you've been getting your cost proposals. And when it's time to write change orders, you can just click a button and be able to automatically bring in those line items. So this one, 004, is the item that we made. And we're going to bring that into the change order automatically to create that connection and save some time in creating an item. So here it brought in my activity code, it brought in the dollars. I can decide if this is material or services. And I'm going to click Save and Close. So that's how easy it is to just make a change order and bring the information in from an issue. But now I want to show you the ones as I talked about. Now, this is part of that configuration that you can do. You can have both review and signature processes, and it can be a very complicated approval process where, you can decide thresholds and limitations, up to a certain amount, it only goes to one person. And then after that, it might have to go through a different workflow. You can build all that business logic into Kahua, and you can have that different across your portfolio if you require it. But what we're going to show you today is a relatively simple one. And so I'm going to click Submit for Review. So if I was a PM, I just make this change order. I don't have to think about what the workflow should be. My school district already decided what that workflow should be. I just have to make the item and click Submit for Review, and now it's going to go through the proper review process. And to show you what that looks like, I made myself who it's going to be reviewed for, and you'll see I get a task notification in the bottom right-hand corner. So this button in the upper right-hand corner is my tasks. And when I click on this, it's going to bring up all the tasks that are in my court. Now, this is a good time to stop and talk about tasks that I showed on the home screen, something that I think is very important in Kahua. You'll see I have a change order at the top, but what this whole list is everything in Kahua that is in my court across all my projects and all my applications. So it's basically my to-do list in Kahua. Everything that requires me to respond, approve, review, anything that I need to be notified about and take action on is all in this one succinct list. It's almost like if you in the morning go check your email and you work through the list of emails that you've received, but for this, it's going to be the items that are in your court to complete. When I used another system as a PM, I had to go from project to project all over the place and kind of figure out what was in my court. And so it's nice to have everything in one central location. Now, in this example, for the change order, this is what it would look like to receive an approval task. Once again, these portable views are configurable, and so we can help you with this, or you can modify these themselves to have the change order presented in the way that you want. We also have a bunch of out-of-the-box versions of this that you can choose from. If I scroll down, I can see what the approval steps are going to be. So as I said, in this step, I made a simple one, and it's just going to be me as the project manager approving. But if there was multiple steps here, you'd be able to see what that would look like, so you can see who it's going to be going to. And I'm just going to click Approve. And now you'll see that this task has been removed from my list, and I can work down through the rest of the items that are in my task. But if we return to our change order, we can see that the review is complete. And now we're going to submit it for signature. So maybe you have an internal review process before sending it out to other parties for signature. Now you can create a separate one. This might be to get your contractors to sign it. Maybe a member of the board needs to sign it. Whatever that needs to be, this gives you the flexibility to have two different processes. So the first one, I made it an internal Kahua where you just click Approve. I could also make it a Kahua e-signature where I get notified and I have my signature in Kahua, and I can electronically sign the document. And there is also a integration with DocuSign where the cost of DocuSign is included with Kahua and it is integrated with it. So just by clicking Submit for Signature, now I'm going to have a DocuSign in my email and complete it like any other DocuSign. So I'll review my document, put my signature on here, click Finish. And complete it like you would any other DocuSign. Now it's automatically going to send back the signed document. It's automatically going to update the status. And as we'll show, it automatically updates the the fund sources as well, because it's all connected. Return to fund sources. Take a look at our bond. And now you'll see in my committed section, I have that $1,111. And so this is how, as project managers or other members of the team are managing projects on a daily basis, as I said earlier, approving change orders or contracts, or creating budgets, or reviewing and approving invoices. All of that information is automatically being reported back to your fund sources with the ability to check it in the fund source application, or eventually roll up this information to dashboards or reports that we'll take a look at in just a moment. And if I go all the way back up to in the hierarchy to where these fund sources were originated, I can go back into my that bond we originally talked to, and what do you know, that information made it all the way up here as well. Now you might say that's great that I can go to sources of funds at these different projects, but you might want to see it all at more of a portfolio level. So let's go to another project and look at our analytics for fund sources. So here we have a WBS fund source, or dashboard. And so now this is giving me all of my projects, how much has been reserved for each project, what the fund source was, how much I've released, and then all of this budget, commitment, and payment information. So now you're able to see all of this across a multitude of projects. And once again, because this is Power BI, I have the ability to easily filter this information down for just the projects that I'm worried about, or just the level of the hierarchy that I want to see this information on. A lot of our customers, when it comes to reporting to the board, I believe we received a question earlier about, sorry, I'm reading it here. Reporting information back to the board. This is one way that they do that, by creating these dashboards, and whether they're printing it from here, or as you can see here, I can export this data. And if you have another report system that you need to use, you can easily pull this information out of Kahua and bring that into how you're building your other reports. Now, another way I can do this is with this deep WBS dashboard. And now it's going to give me multiple different fund sources, more of that information with the ability to filter by fund source. So I can select just a single fund source and now see all the projects and the commitments across just that individual fund source, and be able to toggle between fund sources, projects, appropriations, and releases. And through these different filters, really get the snapshot of information that I'm looking for. Before we leave budget and cost management, we're going to take a quick look at cash flow forecasting. And so I just want to go to my project, and there's two ways I want to show you this. The first is a multi-project cash flow. There's a lot of detail about the different ways that you can build this out. And what I mean is that you can configure these to represent the information the way you want. But what's important is when I click this Manage button, you'll see I have 4 different projects. I can decide how I want these cash flows to be distributed across curves. I can decide the start and end date of these projects that I need to be distributed upon. And now it's pulling this information directly from those projects. So when we were showing the budgets and the commitments and the invoices or the payments that have been made, that's where it's pulling this information from. So you're using live, real project information. As contracts are being created, it can be updated. You can see this Get Current button on the bottom. And now you can use those real-time project dollars to create your cash flow. The way I have this set up is a really nice way, in my opinion, that I set my current period as June of 2024. Now, anything before this is pulling information from my actuals, from my invoices. And so it's really what has happened, what has been paid. And then it's taking the rest of my commitments and distributing that across the time period that I've selected over the curve that I've selected. So you can use actual information in the past, and then the remaining dollars either in your budget or in your commitments, and distribute that as necessary. You can see I have new versions, so I can create different versions of this and be able to compare them, maybe different iterations of cash flow forecasts. And if I want to do just a project specific one, I have the ability to do that as well. Now, in this example, I've broken it up into my different budgets, expenses, and actual, so I can see those compared to each other. And I also have the ability to link these to milestone items. So you can use our milestone app, and then it'll automatically update the schedule or the start and end date from those milestones. So you can just update your milestones in Kahua and then plug those into the different line items associated with them and automatically update these dates associated with them. And now where it gets very powerful is if I go back to my analytics, I can have cash flow analytics and be able to compare multiple cash flows across multiple projects over a time scale. So you can see I have multiple projects here. It'll list out with the ability to drill down between the years, quarters, months, etc. And I can hover over these and see what this information is coming from. I can pick and choose different projects and it'll overlay them on this same graph to see over the time period that I've chosen how these funds are going to be accumulated. A monthly cash flow and see across different projects how this cash flow is going to be with individual bar charts as well. So that was everything from fund sources through budget and cost management to cash flow. We want to leave some time for Q&A. So we're going to take a look at a few document management or construction management or construction administration items right now. And first, I want to start with our file manager. So this is where all of your drawings and documents and specifications, et cetera, are going to be stored. And we're going to take a look at some drawings as an example today. This file structure or folder structure is entirely templatable. So you might have a standard way that you do that. You can build this out, put it in a template, select the template when you make a project, and it'll automatically bring it in along with any other documents. Let's say you can make that as part of the template as well. If I go into a drawing, I have all these action buttons across the top. It's very easy to send the file, send a link to it. A lot of our customers do this for sending videos that aren't going to fit through their email server, so they can put it on Kahua and be able to send the link through here. I mentioned DocuSign integration earlier. We have the ability to do that as well for any of our documents in our file manager. And I have all the markup functionality that you'd expect, but I want to show you that through a different application that's connected to File Manager, which is our design review application. And so this can be used for a couple things. Let's say you have 30, 60, 90 design iterations that you need to manage, or you need to redline projects or do a constructability review. This application is used to have a collaborative workspace for marking up drawings. So as you see here, when I go into markup, I have all these markup tools. I can put text boxes and clouds and callouts and measurements. And if I click show my markup panel, I can see all these different markups and bounce around between them. I can put additional comments here. And what you can do is have multiple people on the same workflow step marking up a set of drawings all at the same time. And so they can see everybody's comments as they're marking it up. This might be very similar to Bluebeam Studio if you've used that, but what makes this special is if I back out of here and go to that specific drawing, I'll click my flyout panel. And so now I'll see the details of that drawing here. You'll see a reviewer comment section with an extract and import markups. And so with one click of the button, I can actually pull all those markups out into this reviewer comment section and then manage them. If I go to my review comment section at the top, I can see all the comments on all my drawings, and you'll see there's a workflow status section. I can run all these through a workflow so that people can receive a task, and I can track that these comments that are being made in my design review iterations are actually being completed, track the completion of them, and if items don't get completed, I have the ability to carry them forth to the next drawing set to be reviewed and track those comments in the next iteration of drawings. So a lot of people are doing a good job of marking up comments, but what we hear from our customers is that they don't do a great job of tracking that these comments are being addressed. And then when they're doing the construction process, 6 months down the line, a comment that they made, they see doesn't get addressed, and now it's too late because they're too far along in the construction process. Another document management application we have that might be of interest is our punch list application. So if I go to punch list app, just like with my RFIs, I can see a list. I have a couple different ways that I can filter between drawing mode. So now I project, and now I can see the punch list items on this drawing. You'll see they're going to populate here. I can open my panel up on the right, and it's going to show me all my different items. I can click new or click this plus button and then select a location and pin where that exact location is. I can go through here and actually you can define a library type, and then within each of those types have a certain set of defects to choose from. So if you've ever done a punch list before, you know that you're going to write, chipped paint or caulk the backsplash 100 different times. You can create those items so that all you do is select from a list and it'll automatically fill them out. So you don't have to type those things out over and over and over again. And now you're just filling out what the responsible party should be, how you want the workflow to be distributed. And this is actually something that you can automatically templatize. So you can make different sets of workflows and you just select which one and it'll fill out who the responsible party is and who the approvers are automatically. And what you see here is going to look exactly the same on your mobile device because most likely you're going to be in the field using a tablet or a phone. It's going to look just like you see here with the ability to tap the location on the drawing as well. Now, before we turn it over to Q&A, I do want to take a look at some of these questions here. And one of them, I believe, talked about reports. So we have one that said, can you show the difference between a program level report versus a project level report? And I did want to wrap it up with reports. So we did talk about dashboards and our Power BI embedded in Kahua, but I wanted to show you a couple of our current customers and how they're using our reporting capabilities today, specifically for those monthly or semi-yearly reports to the board. And so I'm going to go onto the web and you can actually go look for these yourselves. The first one we're going to look at is Pasadena Unified School District. If you go on their website, you can find this. They publish this to the public. And this is something that they have to do on a certain cadence. I believe it's either 2 or 4 times a year. But here's an example of a report that they've made with Kahua. And all they do is manage these projects in Kahua. When the time comes, they can click a button and it will make a multi-project report across their entire portfolio. In this first example, they have a list of all the different projects that are within this fund source. They can define this with a report writer. They don't have to type any of these numbers in or do any math. They just print the report and have managed the projects in Kahua. It's going to populate this right here for them with all the projects and the different phases that they're in. And then as we get into the list of projects, now you can actually see the hierarchy in action. You can see that they've broken it down by the different types of schools. So elementary schools is one way they broke it down. And then within that are their projects. They have the different phases. They can put fields in for % complete and whether a DSA is required, and they can type in an update status in their projects. But what's important is that, as I said, they do this in Kahua. They manage their projects day to day. And when the time comes, they just have to click one button and this report is automatically generated for them. Now, if I scroll down to page 15, you'll see they have another report here in a similar fashion where they have it broken down into the different hierarchy between the types of schools and the different projects. And now they're getting that budget, contract or commitment and invoice information that you and I all looked at being managed on a day-to-day process through that change order. It's summarizing it all here. So they don't have to go through spreadsheets and pull this funding information. You'll see at the top, they have their fund source, their current budget. And this is very similar to the fund source summary that we looked at. I'm sure that it's pulling the data directly from there as well. Once again, they just click this pre-created report and it pulls all the data from Kahua. And the second one I want to show you is San Juan Unified School District, which once again, you can go look this up yourself. They publish this on the web, and they have their full bond oversight committee. But I want to scroll down to page 32. And now we have another example of a report that's automatically created in Kahua. I'll zoom in a little bit for you. This is a list of all of their projects. And once again, they're going to have their budget information, what's been committed, changes approved, payments, all this information that is being managed day to day in Kahua with it. Hopefully it is easier to manage with the workflow that we showed you, and then it's easier to report on. This is another example where they can click one button and all this information is going to be summarized for them. And now if we go to page 34, now we're going to have a list of all of their individual projects. And so to that question about a project level report versus a program level report, they just as easily were able to create a bunch of individual project level reports and summarize them all together within one report. So here it's going to, you'll see this is pages and pages of all their different projects, and it's a snapshot of that information. They can see dollars that have been reserved for this. They're pulling milestones information from Kahua, along with, once again, more budget commitment and actual information being pulled from Kahua. So now that we have about 14 minutes left, I did want to save some time for Q&A. So thank you for listening to this portion of the demo. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them now if you want to type them into the chat. I think I have some here. Can you manage funds over multiple fiscal years? So yes, absolutely. And there are a couple different ways to do that. You can either create fund sources for each of the years, but my favorite way is to do the appropriations because, you know, if you have a bond, it's all really part of the same bond fund source, but you can manage those different year appropriations and be able to report on those different appropriations easier. Some of our customers have to do those yearly reports for a fiscal year, and with those appropriations and the nature of Kahua tracking when budgets are created, invoices are imported or created and processed in Kahua, it's very easy to create a report that summarizes everything that's been done within a fiscal year. You can easily determine what those timelines should be. And we actually have dashboards that allow you to toggle all of those records into, well, let's say it's September 1st to August 31st. You can easily toggle that and then export that information out. Is there a difference between using a contractor-based PMIS versus an owner-based PMIS when managing bonds or funds? So as I said, I come from a contractor background and therefore used a contractor-based PMIS. And what I found was that they were very project-centric. The one that I used was very good for managing projects, specifically, you know, your document management, your field observations, things of that nature. But when it comes to how owners are managing funds and budgets and contracts across an entire portfolio, Kahua's hierarchical nature and the ability to manage these funds and these projects, not only with these dashboarding and reporting, but with how that hierarchy is set up, just makes it an easier tool to use rather than just having a list of projects and having to filter between the two. It's set up with an owner in mind, and then so therefore it makes it easier to control this and to be able to report that information across your portfolio. Question is, will a recording of this presentation be available for us after? Dominga, can you answer that for us? You there, Dominga?
Yep, sorry. There will be a recording of this available afterwards.
Thank you. Dominga, am I missing any questions so far?
No, I think you got to all of them, so we can go ahead and close out this webinar if that's okay with you, Dan.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, I just want to go ahead and thank everyone for joining us today, especially our speakers, Dan and Brendan. We will be sending out a recording, like I said before, so be on the lookout for that. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.